For thousands of years, people have loved a good puzzle. Think about it. We've always been trying to figure things out ever since we started drawing on cave walls. And riddles, they are some of the oldest puzzles we have. These aren't just silly games. They were tests of wisdom, challenges from gods or monsters, or simply clever ways to share understanding. Often, they hide deep truths about life, death, or what it means to be human. Imagine a time before books were common, before smartphones gave us all the answers. People gathered around fires. They told stories, and they challenged each other with riddles. These verbal puzzles weren't just for fun. Sometimes lives hung in the balance. Heroes had to solve them to save cities, but wise rulers used them to test advisors. They were a way to show intelligence, wit, and a deep understanding of the world. Some of these ancient riddles are still around today. We read them in old texts, hear them in myths, and find them etched into the history of human thought. But they can be really hard to solve. They come from cultures very different from our own. They use metaphors we might not grasp at first, and they force us to think in ways we rarely do anymore. We might think we are smart, but these ancient brain teasers can humble even the sharpest minds. Have you ever wondered what kind of puzzles people faced thousands of years ago? What did they value in cleverness? How did they see the world reflected in their word games? And what secrets do these riddles still hold about humanity itself? These questions are fascinating. They connect us directly to our distant ancestors. They show us how much we've changed and how much we haven't. Let's look at 18 of these ancient riddles. We will see where they came from, who tried to solve them, and what they might have meant. And we will think about what we still don't fully understand about these incredible pieces of human history. Number 1, can a simple thread trace the path of life? This riddle, about a needle and thread, might seem very plain at first glance. But ancient people saw deep meaning in the tools of their daily lives. It often comes up in various forms across different cultures, from ancient Greece to Roman times and beyond. It highlights how even the smallest, most common objects could inspire profound thought. This particular version asks us to look at something essential yet often overlooked with a fresh perspective. Here's the riddle. What has an eye but cannot see, a body but no limbs, and passes through life leaving a trail? Think about the way ancient societies operated. Life was full of manual labor. Textiles were crucial. People spent countless hours spinning thread, weaving cloth, and mending garments. A needle was not just a tool, it was a constant companion, a vital part of everyday survival. It repaired clothes, created tapestries, and sometimes it was even used in early surgical procedures. Its presence was pervasive, from the humblest dwelling to the grandest palace. This riddle plays on our human tendency to project living characteristics onto inanimate objects. The eye of a needle is a clear example of this. We understand what an eye does for us, but for an object, it's a whole. The body of the needle is its shaft, solid and unmoving by itself. It has no limbs, so it cannot move independently. Yet, it passes through life. This phrase is poetic. It suggests movement, purpose, and impact. And crucially, it leaves a trail. This trail is the thread, the product of its work. When we consider the historical context, the riddle becomes richer. In ancient Greece, Homer's epics like the Odyssey mention weaving as a high skill, something Penelope used to trick her suitors. The Roman poet Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, tells the story of Arachne, a skilled weaver. These stories show that textiles and the tools to make them held cultural importance. Scholars like Professor Mary Beard, a classicist at Cambridge, often highlight how everyday objects reveal much about ancient life. The needle, small as it is, was a linchpin of household economy and comfort. The solution to this riddle is, of course, a needle and thread. The needle, guided by a hand, travels through fabric. It creates seams, mends tears, and crafts intricate patterns. The trail it leaves is the thread, which connects, binds, and forms something new. This riddle celebrates human ingenuity and the transformation of raw materials into useful objects. It's a testament to the skill of artisans and the value placed on practical creation in ancient societies. It also reminds us that even silent tools have a story to tell, a purpose to fulfill, and a lasting mark they leave on the world. It shows how the abstract concept of life can be applied to the process of creation. What do we still not know about this simple riddle? Why does the eye metaphor recur so often in riddles across different cultures for different objects? Did specific ancient cultures have different spiritual interpretations of the needle and thread beyond its practical use? And how did the act of weaving or sewing influence ancient philosophical thought about connection and destiny? Number 2, what is a storm's secret pregnancy? This particular riddle taps into observations of nature, a common source of ancient wisdom and mystery. For early civilizations, understanding weather patterns was crucial for survival. A sudden storm could bring life-giving rain or devastating floods. People watched the skies with reverence and fear. They sought to interpret the signs, to understand the forces at play. This riddle captures that sense of wonder and the powerful, unpredictable nature of weather. It asks us to look at a phenomenon and see its inherent paradox. Here's the riddle. What is it that is pregnant but gives birth to nothing? This riddle, or variations of it, is found in ancient Mesopotamian literature. Sumerian and Akkadian texts, inscribed on clay tablets, reveal a society deeply connected to the natural world. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers were lifeblood, but their floods were also destructive. Weather was directly linked to the gods. Nana, the moon god, and Enlil, the god of wind and storm, were central figures. The act of creation, of giving birth, was a sacred concept in these cultures, often linked to goddesses like Inanna. To speak of something pregnant but giving birth to nothing would have been a striking paradox to them. Early Sumerian scribes, often trained in sophisticated schools called eduba, documented everything from economic transactions to epic poems and wisdom literature. Scholars like Samuel Noah Kramer, whose work History Begins at Sumer brought many of these texts to light, showed how rich and complex Sumerian thought was. These texts included proverbs, parables, and indeed riddles that challenged the mind. The observation of a storm cloud swelling with moisture, darkening the sky like a pregnant belly, but releasing only water and noise, not a tangible child, fits perfectly into this ancient intellectual tradition. It is a profound observation of natural cycles. The solution to this ancient Mesopotamian riddle is a storm cloud. A storm cloud builds up, heavy and full, carrying immense amounts of water. It looks like it's holding something substantial, something about to burst forth. In human terms, it appears pregnant, but when it gives birth, it releases rain, lightning, and thunder. These are not things in the same way. A mother gives birth to a child. The rain disperses, the thunder fades, the lightning vanishes. There is no lasting, distinct entity born from the cloud. It's a powerful metaphor for potential unfulfilled in a material sense, yet fulfilling in another. The water nourishes the earth, but the cloud itself produces no offspring that remains visible after the event. This riddle forces us to think beyond literal interpretations. It pushes us to consider the essence of processes, rather than just their tangible outcomes. It highlights the ancient world's close observation of natural phenomena and their ability to extract philosophical meaning from everyday occurrences. It shows how language could be used to play with concepts of creation, expectation, and emptiness, even in the most basic observations of the sky. What deeper layers of meaning might ancient Mesopotamians have attributed to storm clouds beyond just their physical properties? Did they view the nothing born from the cloud as a metaphor for divine disappointment, or perhaps a different form of spiritual bounty? How did their astronomical observations and religious beliefs about celestial bodies intertwine with their understanding of weather-related riddles? Number 3, what speaks without a tongue and weeps without eyes? This riddle comes from a tradition rich in poetic imagery and deep connections to the natural world, the Anglo-Saxon culture, which flourished in England from the 5th to the 11th centuries. Their literature, particularly the Exeter book, is a treasure trove of riddles that reflect their environment, their daily lives, and their philosophical outlook. These riddles were not simple brain teasers. They were often complex literary devices full of kenning, compound, metaphorical expressions, and double meanings. They challenged listeners to think creatively and observe the world around them with keen attention. Here is the riddle, adapted from the Exeter book. I am a living thing, yet I speak with no tongue. I have no eyes, yet I weep often. I have no wings, yet I fly on the wind. I have no hands, yet I strike with force. The Exeter book, a 10th century manuscript, is one of the 4 major codices of Old English literature. It contains a collection of nearly 100 riddles, alongside elegies and other poems. These riddles were likely part of an oral tradition before they were written down. They give us a direct window into the minds of people who lived over 1,000 years ago. Scholars like Professor Patrick W. Connor, who has studied and edited the Exeter book, highlight how these riddles use vivid personified language to describe the ordinary and extraordinary alike. They often combine aspects of nature with human experience, creating powerful and often perplexing images. The Anglo-Saxons lived in a landscape shaped by powerful natural forces. Storms, winds, and rain were not just weather, they were often seen as manifestations of divine power or malevolent forces. The sea was a constant presence, both a highway and a threat. Therefore, a riddle that embodies the characteristics of a natural phenomenon would have resonated deeply with them. The idea of something speaking without a tongue refers to the noise it makes, the sound of its passage. Weeping, without eyes, perfectly describes the rain it brings. Flying on the wind without wings is a literal observation of how it moves. And striking with force without hands evokes the damage it can cause, the impact of its power. The solution to this Exeter book riddle is a storm, or a storm cloud. The storm speaks with the roar of thunder and the howl of wind. It weeps with the relentless downpour of rain. It rides the invisible currents of the air carried by the wind across vast distances. And it strikes with the destructive power of lightning, strong gusts, and floods, leaving a trail of impact. This riddle beautifully captures the multifaceted nature of a storm, personifying its various elements into a single, cohesive, yet mysterious entity. It's a testament to the Anglo-Saxons' poetic skill and their profound observation of the world they inhabited, transforming a common occurrence into a subject of wonder and intellectual challenge. What specific pagan beliefs or Christian interpretations might have been subtly embedded in the Anglo-Saxon understanding of storms as presented in such riddles? How did the language of these riddles, often rich in alliteration and specific vocabulary, influence the development of later English poetry? And were these riddles primarily for entertainment, or did they serve a didactic purpose in teaching younger generations about the world and language? Number 4, what reveals all knowledge by knowing only one thing? This isn't a riddle in the typical sense of a short, clever puzzle. Instead, it's a profound philosophical question that forms the core of ancient Indian wisdom traditions, specifically within the Upanishads. These texts, composed between 800 and 400 BCE, are foundational to Hinduism and explore the nature of reality, consciousness, and the self. They are dialogues and discussions between sages and students, often using paradoxes and metaphors to guide understanding. This particular question challenges the very concept of knowledge itself, urging us to look beyond fragmented facts to a unified truth. Here is the riddle. What is that by knowing which everything else becomes known? The Upanishads are part of the Vedas, the oldest sacred texts of India. They move beyond the ritualistic focus of earlier Vedic hymns to delve into deeper metaphysical inquiries. They question the purpose of life, the nature of the divine, and the relationship between the individual soul Atman and the universal soul Brahman. Scholars like Eknath Easwaran, who translated and commented on the Upanishads, describe them as texts that invite direct experience and self-inquiry rather than dogma. The search for a single, unifying principle was central to their quest for ultimate truth. This question arises in various Upanishads, like the Chandogya Upanishad, in conversations between teachers and students. It challenges the common approach to learning, which involves accumulating many pieces of information. Instead, it suggests that there is a single, fundamental knowledge from which all other knowledge derives. Think about the intellectual climate of ancient India. There were profound discussions on logic, grammar, mathematics, and cosmology. Yet, amidst all this specialized knowledge, the sages proposed a radical idea that true understanding isn't about breadth, but depth, about finding the root cause of all existence. This isn't just about facts, it's about the nature of being. The solution to this Upanishadic riddle is Brahman, the ultimate reality, the universal spirit, or Atman, the individual soul, which is understood to be identical with Brahman. The Upanishadic sages posited that by truly understanding Brahman, the unchanging, infinite, transcendent reality that underlies all phenomena, one understands the essence of everything. If you grasp the fundamental nature of the universe, its source, its animating principle, then all its manifestations, all its individual parts become comprehensible within that context. Similarly, if one realizes their own true self Atman as identical with this universal reality, then the knowledge of the self becomes the knowledge of the cosmos. This isn't about memorizing facts, it's about an experiential realization, a profound shift in consciousness that reveals the interconnectedness of all existence. Knowing the one reveals the all. This riddle is a cornerstone of ancient Indian philosophy. It shifted focus from external rituals to internal realization, from external deities to the divine within. It fundamentally changed the way people thought about learning and spiritual growth. It implies that true wisdom is not fragmented, but holistic, pointing towards a singular, profound truth at the heart of everything. How did this concept of ultimate knowledge influence the scientific and mathematical advancements in ancient India, especially given its focus on inner truth rather than external observation? Are there any parallels to this idea of a unifying knowledge in other ancient philosophical traditions? And if so, how do they differ? And can modern cognitive science or psychology shed any light on why the human mind seeks a singular explanatory principle for all knowledge? Number 5, what walks without legs, sleeps without a bed, and speaks without a mouth? This riddle, a classic found in various forms across many cultures, perfectly encapsulates the ancient human fascination with the natural world. And rivers were central to human civilization. They provided water for drinking, irrigation, and transportation. They were sources of food and often formed natural boundaries. For many ancient peoples, a river was more than just a geographical feature. It was a living entity, sometimes a god, always a force to be reckoned with. This riddle encourages us to observe a river's characteristics and describe them in human terms, creating a beautiful paradox. Here is the riddle. What has a mouth but does not speak, a bed but does not sleep, and runs but has no legs? This riddle type is often associated with Celtic folklore, particularly from Ireland and Wales, where rivers like the Shannon and the Severn played significant roles in mythology and daily life. The Celtic people, known for their rich oral traditions, sagas, and poetic expressions, would have found such a riddle deeply resonant. Their stories are filled with personified natural features, from ancient trees to sacred wells and flowing rivers. Whose authors, like Lady Gregory and William Butler Yeats, collected many examples of Irish folklore, often highlighting the deep connection between the Celtic imagination and the landscape. The river was not just a backdrop, but an active participant in their world. The structure of the riddle relies on personification and metaphor. A, mouth, typically speaks, but the mouth of a river is where it empties into a larger body of water. A bed is where one sleeps, but the bed of a river is its channel. Runs implies movement with legs, but a river flows ceaselessly. These contrasts are what make the riddle so clever and challenging. It forces the listener to abandon literal interpretations and think metaphorically about the object. It asks us to see the familiar in an unfamiliar way, to break down our preconceptions about words and their meanings. The solution to this Celtic-style riddle is a river. A river indeed has a mouth where it meets the sea or another river, but it utters no words. It flows within its bed, the ground it carves out, but it never rests or sleeps. And it runs continuously, its waters moving onward, yet it possesses no legs like a creature. The answer feels obvious once revealed, but the journey to get there requires a shift in perspective. This riddle celebrates the constant motion and life-giving power of rivers, reflecting the deep respect ancient people held for these vital waterways. It shows how the same words we use for human actions can also describe natural processes, creating a bridge between our inner and outer worlds. How did ancient Celtic beliefs about water spirits or river deities influence the crafting and reception of such riddles? Are there any specific archaeological findings along ancient rivers in Celtic lands that suggest a ritualistic or spiritual use of riddles related to water? And how does the constant running of a river, as described in the riddle, connect to ancient Celtic philosophical ideas about time, change, or eternity? Number 6, what has many eyes, but cannot see, many ears, but cannot hear, and many legs, but cannot walk? This riddle is another excellent example of how ancient riddles used common household objects to spark deep thought and wordplay. It highlights the importance of tools in daily life and the human tendency to attribute human characteristics to inanimate things. This particular riddle, found in various forms across cultures, speaks to the ingenious ways people observed the world around them and crafted clever descriptions. It forces us to look beyond the surface appearance and understand an object's function. Here's the riddle. What is it that has many eyes but cannot see, many ears but cannot hear, and many legs but cannot walk? This riddle is often associated with ancient Persian and Middle Eastern folklore. The sieve, the answer, was a ubiquitous tool in ancient households, from sifting flour to separating grains or even filtering herbs. Sieves were essential for preparing food and medicine. The Persian Empire, stretching across vast territories, was a hub of cultural exchange. Its traditions of storytelling and wisdom literature, including works like the Shahnameh, though later, it draws on older traditions, often featured clever wordplay and metaphorical language. The ability to describe an object indirectly, using paradox, was highly valued. The riddle plays on the physical characteristics of a sieve and the human senses. The eyes are the holes in the mesh, through which finer particles pass. The ears might refer to small handles or projections, or perhaps the way it listens to the command of the user, yet it hears nothing. The legs are sometimes the base or supports of a sieve, or simply an exaggerated description of its many holes, which might look like many points of contact, yet it cannot move on its own. The riddle asks us to mentally deconstruct the object, focusing on its visual attributes while denying its human functions. It's a challenge to identify something based on contradictory descriptions. The solution to this ancient riddle is a sieve. A sieve indeed has numerous holes, it's wise, but it possesses no faculty of sight. It might have elements that could be construed as ears, but it registers no sound. And while it might rest on multiple points, giving the appearance of leagues, it is utterly stationary without human intervention. The sieve's purpose is to separate, to refine. It allows some things to pass through while retaining others. This riddle captures that function by describing its physical form in a way that cleverly misleads the listener. It is a testament to the ingenuity of ancient people who could turn a common kitchen tool into a source of intellectual amusement and a lesson in descriptive precision. How did the practical importance of a sieve in food preparation in ancient cultures influence its metaphorical use in riddles and proverbs? Did different sizes or types of sieves have distinct symbolic meanings in ancient Persian or Middle Eastern societies? And what is the prevalence of such riddles about common tools tell us about the daily lives and intellectual habits of ancient people compared to our own object-saturated world? Number 7, what tomb walks with many voices? This riddle is fascinating because it blends biblical history with traditional folklore. It specifically comes from Jewish Midrashic traditions, which are ancient commentaries and interpretations of the Hebrew Bible. These traditions often elaborate on stories or introduce new details and puzzles to extract deeper meaning from sacred texts. The Queen of Sheba's visit to King Solomon, mentioned in the books of Kings and Chronicles, is one such event that became a rich source for later storytellers to imagine specific riddles she might have posed. This particular riddle challenges us to think about a profound paradox from religious history. Here is the riddle, attributed to the Queen of Sheba in Midrash. There is a tomb that walks, and it walks with many voices. The story of the Queen of Sheba's visit to King Solomon around the 10th century BCE is famous. The Bible states she came to test him with hard questions. 1 Kings 10:1. While the biblical account doesn't give specific riddles, later Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions filled in the blanks, creating a vibrant collection of Sheba's riddles. The Yalkut Shimoni, a 13th century compilation of Midrashic literature, is one source where such riddles are recorded. Scholars like Rabbi Louis Ginsburg in his monumental The Legends of the Jews meticulously documented these traditions, showing how ancient narratives were continually reinterpreted and expanded upon. The figure of Solomon, renowned for his wisdom, became the ultimate solver of riddles, validating the cleverness of these traditional puzzles. This riddle immediately creates a striking image, a tomb that is not stationary, but walks. And not silently, but with many voices. A tomb usually represents stillness, death, and permanence. The idea of it walking challenges that stillness, and many voices challenges the silence of the dead. It forces us to recall an event from history or myth where a vessel carried life and death, movement, and sound in a single paradoxical form. It requires knowledge of a specific sacred narrative to unravel. The solution to this midrashic riddle is Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark, according to the book of Genesis, was a vessel built to save humanity and all animal species from a global flood. It was indeed a tomb for the world outside its walls, which perished in the deluge. Yet, within its confines, life was preserved, and it walked in the sense that it floated on the waters for many months, moving across the face of the earth. It was filled with many voices, the cries of animals, the murmurs of Noah and his family, all sounds of life enduring amidst widespread death. The Ark, therefore, perfectly embodies the paradox of a walking tomb filled with life sounds. It represents both destruction and salvation, an ending and a new beginning. This riddle highlights how religious narratives were not just static stories, but dynamic sources for intellectual and spiritual engagement. It shows how ancient thinkers used clever wordplay to encourage deeper reflection on sacred events and to demonstrate the profundity of their holy texts. It's a reminder that wisdom in ancient times often meant understanding the hidden layers of meaning within shared cultural and religious stories. Did the Midrashic tradition of attributing specific riddles to the Queen of Sheba serve a particular theological purpose, such as emphasizing Solomon's extraordinary wisdom or encouraging deeper study of biblical narratives? Are there any similar walking tomb riddles in other ancient cultures that deal with concepts of preservation amidst destruction? And what does the act of walking for a vessel in ancient thought reveal about their understanding of motion and agency for non-living objects? And number 8, what has a head, but no face, and many teeth, but cannot eat? This riddle is a classic example of ancient Chinese wordplay, often found in collections of folk riddles and part of a long tradition of intellectual games. Ancient China, with its sophisticated culture, rich literary heritage, and emphasis on education, valued cleverness and the ability to articulate concepts indirectly. Riddles serve not only as entertainment, but also as a way to sharpen the mind and transmit cultural knowledge. This particular riddle challenges us to identify a common object through its physical attributes, which are described using human-like terms but with contradictory functions. Here is the riddle. What has a head but no face, and many teeth but cannot eat? Riddles have been a part of Chinese culture for centuries, with early examples appearing in texts from the spring and autumn period 771 to 476 BCE, and the Warring States period 475 to 221 BCE. They often relied on poetic language, metaphors, and descriptions of everyday objects. While collections like 100 Riddles by Li Yu are from the Ming Dynasty, they draw upon much older traditions. The emphasis on observation and wit was a consistent theme in Chinese intellectual life. Confucius himself, in his Analects, spoke about the importance of discerning meaning and careful speech, which aligns with the spirit of riddling. The object of this riddle, a comb, was an essential tool in ancient China, where personal grooming and hairstyles often held cultural and social significance. The riddle's cleverness lies in its use of human anatomy to describe an inanimate object. An head typically implies a face, but this object has none. The teeth immediately bring to mind chewing and eating, but this object is incapable of such an action. The listener must think about objects that possess these physical traits in a non-human context. It requires a mental leap, a recognition that words can have multiple meanings depending on the context. It forces one to visualize the object based on its parts, rather than its expected functions. The solution to this ancient Chinese riddle is a comb. A comb has a head in the sense of its top or wider part, where the teeth are attached. But it certainly has no face with features like eyes or a nose, and it possesses many teeth. The individual projections used to untangle and style hair, yet these teeth are for grooming, not for eating food. The comb was a ubiquitous item in ancient Chinese households, used by everyone from emperors to commoners. And hair care was an important ritual, often tied to social status and personal appearance. This riddle elegantly captures the comb's characteristics, turning a mundane item into a subject of intellectual play. It shows the ancient Chinese appreciation for finding cleverness in the ordinary. Did the specific design or materials of combs in ancient China, often made of wood, bone, or jade, influence the way this riddle was framed or understood? Are there any philosophical underpinnings in ancient Chinese thought that connect grooming or the order of hair to broader concepts of societal order or personal conduct? And how does the use of human body parts to describe inanimate objects in Chinese riddles compare to similar linguistic devices in other ancient cultures? Number 9. What kind of child climbs without moving its father? This riddle comes from the rich oral traditions of various African cultures, where riddles are not just games, but vital parts of education, communal bonding, and the transmission of wisdom. In many African societies, storytelling and riddling sessions were evening activities, fostering critical thinking and memory. They often draw heavily on observations of the natural environment and agricultural practices, which were central to daily life. This riddle in particular showcases the interconnectedness of life, focusing on a plant and its unique growth pattern. Here is the riddle. I have a child who climbs the tallest tree, but its father never moves from the ground. Riddles play a significant role in African cultures across the continent. From the Akan people of Ghana to the Zulu of southern Africa and many others, riddles are a common genre. They are often performed in specific settings, sometimes with rituals, and are used to teach, to entertain, and to test wit. Scholars like W.H. Whiteley, who studied African oral literature, have documented the prevalence and diversity of these riddles. Many of them focus on the intricate details of flora and fauna, reflecting a deep respect and understanding of the ecosystem. The idea of child and father here personifies the plant world, making it relatable to human family structures. The riddle creates a vivid image, a child reaching great heights while its father remains rooted. The challenge lies in recognizing this parent-child metaphor in the plant kingdom. It forces the listener to think about things that grow, specifically those that climb. The child is the part that ascends, seeking light and support. The father is the source from which it springs, the foundational element that enables the growth but does not itself embark on the climb. This juxtaposition of movement and stillness, ascent and rootedness, is what makes the riddle so clever and beautiful. The solution to this African riddle is a vine. The child and its root the father. The vine, as the child, grows upwards, using other trees or structures for support, often reaching impressive heights. Its father, the root system, remains firmly embedded in the soil, providing nourishment and stability, but never leaving its ground-bound position. This riddle elegantly describes the symbiotic relationship between a vine and its roots, a common sight in many African landscapes. It highlights the quiet, foundational work of the root and the dynamic, visible growth of the vine. It's a poetic observation of how life sustains itself and reaches for the sky, while remaining connected to its origins. This riddle celebrates the subtle complexities of nature and the wisdom found in careful observation. How did specific African cultural beliefs about kinship and ancestral lineage influence the framing of natural phenomena as father and child in riddles? Are there any particular rituals or ceremonies in ancient African societies where such plant-based riddles played a symbolic role? And what does the emphasis on rootedness versus climbing in this riddle tell us about ancient African philosophical views on tradition, progress, or societal roles? Number 10. What has cities, but no houses, forests, but no trees, and water, but no fish? This riddle is a well-known ancient Latin riddle, famously penned by Symphosius in his collection of Enigmata. Symphosius was a 4th or 5th century Roman poet whose 100 riddles became incredibly popular and influential throughout the Middle Ages. His work demonstrates the enduring appeal of word puzzles in Roman society, not just as entertainment, but as clever literary exercises. This particular riddle cleverly uses familiar geographical terms to describe something entirely different, challenging the listener to think abstractly. Here is the riddle from Symphosius: I have cities, but no houses, forests, but no trees and water, but no fish. Symphosius's Enigmata were written during a period of significant change for the Roman Empire as it transitioned from classical antiquity into the early Christian era. Yet, the riddles retain a classical wit and focus on common objects and concepts. Scholars like F. Glory, who published a critical edition of Symphosius, have shown how his riddles employ concise language and paradoxical descriptions to engage the intellect. The riddles would have been recited at banquets and social gatherings, testing the erudition and quick thinking of the Roman elite. They also serve as models for later riddle collections throughout Europe. The riddle's genius lies in its deceptive use of common geographical terms. Cities, forests, and water conjure images of bustling metropolises, dense woodlands, and expansive seas. But the riddle immediately subverts these expectations by denying their essential components. No houses in the cities, no trees in the forests, no fish in the water. This forces the listener to abandon literal interpretations and consider a symbolic representation of these features. It requires a mental leap to a different kind of world where these elements exist in a purely representational form. The solution to this Roman riddle is a map. A map indeed depicts cities as points or labels, but they contain no actual houses where people live. It shows forests as green areas or symbols, but these are merely representations, not actual trees. And it illustrates water bodies like oceans, rivers, and lakes. But these are flat depictions, devoid of living fish. The map is a symbolic representation of the world, a tool for navigation and understanding geography without physically being present in those places. This riddle beautifully captures the essence of a map pipe, its abstract nature, and its power to convey information about vast landscapes in a condensed form. It highlights the Roman intellectual capacity to conceptualize abstract tools and their utility. How did the Roman Empire's vast geographical reach and its emphasis on administration and military logistics influence the prominence of a riddle about maps? Were there specific pedagogical uses for Symphosius's riddles in Roman education, perhaps to teach critical thinking or spatial reasoning? And what does the absence of life, no houses, trees, fish, in the map's depiction suggest about the Roman perception of representation versus reality? Number 11, what creatures with 10 feet, 3 eyes, and 1 tail share only 1 tongue? This is a deep and challenging riddle that comes from Norse mythology, specifically from the Hervarar saga Oke Hydrex, the saga of Hervor and King Hydrek. This saga from the 13th century is a rich source of Old Norse poetry, heroic legends, and, notably, a famous riddle game between King Hydrek and the disguised god Odin, who calls himself Gestumblindi. These riddles were not just trivial puzzles, they were tests of wit, wisdom, and often knowledge of obscure mythological details with fatal consequences for failure. Here is the riddle. As posed by Gestumblindi, who are the two that have 10 feet, 3 eyes, and 1 tail, and yet only 1 tongue? The Hervarar saga is considered a legendary saga blending history and myth. It provides invaluable insights into Norse culture, including their beliefs about gods, heroes, and the importance of wisdom. The riddle game with Gestumblindi Odin is a pivotal moment in the saga. It showcases the Norse admiration for cleverness and the high stakes involved in intellectual contests where even the All-Father Odin would participate, challenging mortals. Scholars like Christopher Tolkien, who edited and translated versions of the saga, have emphasized the intricate layers of meaning within these riddles, often requiring a deep familiarity with Norse cosmology and iconography. The riddle is deliberately misleading, combining distinct entities into a single composite description. 2. Suggests 2 individual beings. 10 feet seems impossible for 2 standard creatures. 3 eyes is also unusual. 1 tail and 1 tongue further complicate the picture, suggesting unity where there appears to be multiplicity. The listener must think metaphorically, identifying the components that make up this strange collective. It requires a detailed knowledge of specific mythological figures and their attributes. The solution to this Norse riddle is Odin riding his 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, with one of his ravens, Hugin or Munin, perched on his shoulder. Let's break it down. The two are Odin and his horse. Odin has 2 feet, Sleipnir has 8, totaling 10 feet. Odin has 2 eyes, and the raven often depicted with its own keen sight, or representing Odin's third mind's eye for prophecy sitting on his shoulder makes for 3 eyes in this composite image. Sleipnir has 1 tail, and the raven has 1 tongue, but they are considered as sharing 1 tongue in the sense of communication or utterance from Odin's perspective, or the raven's role as his messenger. More simply, some interpretations focus on the raven's tongue being the single one speaking, relaying Odin's thoughts. This solution elegantly weaves together disparate mythological elements into a unified, if paradoxical, answer. It's a riddle that requires specific cultural knowledge to truly crack. This riddle underscores the profound integration of mythology into daily intellectual life in ancient Norse societies. It wasn't just stories, it was a framework for understanding the world, and riddles were a way to test that understanding. The high stakes of such riddle contests reflect the Norse value placed on wisdom and wit as crucial qualities for leaders and gods alike. Were there specific shamanic or spiritual practices in ancient Norse culture that might have informed the symbolic combination of disparate body parts in this riddle, particularly regarding Odin's attributes? How did the performance of riddle games like Gestumblindis function in Norse society, beyond mere entertainment, perhaps as a form of legal or social arbitration? And what enduring psychological archetypes can be found in the complex image of Odin, Sleipnir, and the Raven as presented in this challenging puzzle? Number 12. What is weightier than the earth, higher than the sky, swifter than the wind, and more numerous than blades of grass? This isn't just one riddle, but a series of profound questions posed in one of the greatest epic poems of ancient India, the Mahabharata. Known as the Yaksha Prashna questions of the Yaksha. This episode occurs during the Pandavas' exile and represents a pivotal moment for Yudhishthira, the eldest and wisest of the brothers. The questions are posed by a yaksha, a nature spirit or demigod, as a test of dharma, righteous conduct, and wisdom, without which the brothers face death. It's a foundational text for Indian philosophy and ethics, showcasing the depth of ancient thought. Here are the questions. A riddle. In 4 parts, what is weightier than the earth? What is higher than the sky? What is swifter than the wind? What is more numerous than blades of grass? The Mahabharata, attributed to the sage Vyasa, is one of the longest epic poems in the world, containing over 100,000 verses. It was composed over several centuries, roughly between 400 BCE and 400 CE, evolving into a vast repository of Indian culture, philosophy, and history. The Yaksha Prashna is found in the Aranya Parva forest book and serves as a moral and philosophical discourse within the larger narrative. Scholars, like John Brockington, who studied the Mahabharata's ethical teachings, emphasize how episodes like this were used to convey profound lessons on righteousness, duty, and the nature of existence. The Yaksha's questions are not trivial, they are existential inquiries. The setup is dramatic. Yudhishthira's brothers succumb to thirst and die after failing to answer the Yaksha's questions. Yudhishthira arrives, and the Yaksha presents him with these profound philosophical puzzles. The questions use hyperbolic comparisons to push the listener beyond literal physical attributes. How can anything be weightier than the earth or higher than the sky? This immediately tells us the answers must be abstract, not concrete objects. They challenge us to consider the emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of human experience. These answers delivered by Yudhishthira revive his brothers and reveal his profound wisdom and adherence to Dharma. The riddle's solutions are not about physical properties, but about the immense intangible power of familial bonds in the human psyche. It emphasizes the importance of emotional and mental realities over purely material ones. The Yaksha Prashna is a timeless lesson in ethical philosophy and the understanding of what truly matters in life. How did the Yaksha Prashna's emphasis on familial love and the power of the mind influence ancient Indian societal structures or psychological theories? Are there any parallels in other ancient epic traditions where deities or spirits test heroes with questions of abstract ethical value? And what can modern psychology or neuroscience tell us about the speed and quantity of human thought, as recognized so profoundly in this ancient riddle? Number 13. What is a wondrous creature for women, a hope to neighbors, and harms? No one but its slayer. This riddle comes from the Exeter Book, an invaluable anthology of Anglo-Saxon poetry from the 10th century. Anglo-Saxon riddles are renowned for their vivid imagery, clever wordplay, and often their double meanings. They frequently personify objects and natural phenomena, challenging the listener to look past the literal description to find the true, often earthy answer. This particular riddle, Riddle 34, is one of the most famous and debated from the collection, notorious for its suggestive undertones. Here is the riddle, adapted from the Exeter Book. I am a wondrous creature, for women a joy, a hope to my neighbors. I harm no one inhabiting the earth, except only my slayer. I stand up high and steep, in a bed. I have a shaggy lower part. Sometimes a beautiful peasant's daughter, a proud queen, takes liberties with me, putting her hand on my body, under my covering, and feels me. What am I? The Exeter Book riddles were likely part of a vibrant oral tradition before being written down. They offer a unique window into the Anglo-Saxon mind, their humor, their observations of daily life, and their mastery of language. Scholars like Fred C. Robinson and Roy Michael Liuzza, who have dedicated their careers to studying Old English literature, often highlight the playful obscenity that riddles like this one contain. This wasn't necessarily crude, it was a form of intellectual game, using everyday objects to evoke suggestive imagery and challenge assumptions. The audience was expected to appreciate both the innocent and the bawdy interpretations. The riddle creates a strong initial impression, full of suggestive imagery. Wondrous creature, joy to women, hope to neighbors sets a positive tone. The idea of harming no one except its slayer hints at something consumed or used up. The description of it standing high and steep in a bed, with a shaggy lower part, and then the vivid imagery of women taking liberties, putting her hand on my body, under my covering, and feels me. All of this is designed to make the listener think of something overtly sexual. This misdirection is key to the riddle's genius. It relies on the human mind's tendency to jump to a sensational conclusion, only to be surprised by a mundane reality. The solution to Exeter Book Riddle 34 is an onion. Let's unpack the onion. It is indeed a wondrous creature for its culinary uses and a joy to women who prepare food. It is a hop to neighbors as a staple crop. It harms no one unless it is slain, cut, and consumed. It can stand high and steep in its garden bed a patch of earth. It has a shaggy lower part, its roots, and when a woman prepares it, she peels its layers, putting her hand on its body under its covering and feels its firmness. The weeping it causes when cut also adds another layer of meaning to its layer. The genius of the riddle is in how it makes you think of something explicit, only to reveal a common vegetable. It showcases the Anglo-Saxons' wit and their ability to find humor and cleverness in the mundane world. How did the dual meaning innocent versus suggestive of riddles like this one function in Anglo-Saxon society, and what does it reveal about their social norms regarding humor and sexuality? Were there specific contexts or audiences for which the more suggestive interpretations were intended or avoided? And what does the prevalence of such clever double entendres tell us about the sophistication of Old English language and poetic technique? Number 14, what has a father? With 12 children, each with 30 daughters, half white and half black. This is a classic riddle attributed to Cleobulus of Lindos, one of the 7 sages of ancient Greece. These were figures revered for their wisdom in the 6th century BCE. Their sayings and deeds were widely celebrated. Cleobulus was known for his cleverness and poetic skill, and this riddle is one of the few examples of his work that has survived. It's a timeless puzzle that captures the cyclical nature of time, using a familial metaphor to describe celestial movements and daily rhythms. Here is the riddle from Cleobulus of Lindos. There is a father, and he has 12 children, and these 12 children each have 30 daughters, all different in appearance. Some are white, some are black, and though they are immortal, they all die. The 7 sages figures like Thales, Solon, and Cleobulus were central to early Greek intellectual life. They were philosophers, statesmen, and poets, whose wisdom was often encapsulated in pithy sayings or challenging riddles. Diogenes Laertius, a 3rd century CE biographer of Greek philosophers, is one of the key sources for accounts of their lives and teachings, including this riddle attributed to Cleobulus. The period was marked by an intense curiosity about the natural world, astronomy, and the organization of time. The development of calendars and the observation of celestial bodies were crucial for agriculture, navigation, and religious festivals. This riddle reflects that keen observation. The riddle uses a generational metaphor to describe units of time. The father is the overarching unit. His 12 children are distinct, yet part of a larger whole. Each of these children then produces 30 daughters, further subdividing the time. The different appearance of the daughters, some are white, some are black, points to contrasting states. And the final paradox, immortal, yet they all die, highlights the continuous yet transient nature of time. It requires a systematic unraveling of the metaphors, aligning them with the way time is structured and perceived. The solution to Cleobulus's riddle is the year the father, the months the 12 children, and the days the 30 daughters, alternating between day and night. The father is the year which oversees everything. The 12 children are the 12 months that make up the year. Each month in ancient calendars was often approximated to 30 daughters, representing the days. And these daughters are different in appearance because they are either white day or black night. Though the concept of time, year, month, day is immortal in the sense that it perpetually renews itself, each specific day, month, and year dees as it passes into the past. This riddle is a profound and elegant way of describing the calendar and the cycles of light and darkness that govern human life. It shows the ancient Greek ability to observe, categorize, and poetically represent the fundamental structures of their world. How did the different ancient Greek calendar systems, e.g. lunar versus solar, influence the exact number of daughters, days attributed to each child, month, in different versions of this riddle? Did Cleobulus or other sages use riddles like this as a pedagogical tool to teach astronomy or timekeeping to their students? And what is the paradox of something being immortal yet dying? Tell us about ancient Greek philosophical views on cyclical time versus linear time. Number 15, what goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? This is arguably the most famous ancient riddle of all time, the riddle of the Sphinx. It comes from ancient Greek mythology, most notably in Sophocles' tragedy Oedipus Rex, first performed around 429 BCE. The Sphinx, a terrifying creature with the body of a lion, the wings of a bird, and the head of a woman, guarded the city of Thebes. She devoured anyone who could not solve her riddle. It was a test of life and death, an ultimate challenge to human intellect. Here's the Sphinx's riddle. Whack goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening. The story of the Sphinx and Oedipus is a cornerstone of Western literature and psychology. The Sphinx was sent by the gods to punish Thebes. Her riddle was not just a puzzle, it was a symbol of cosmic justice and the limitations of human knowledge. Sophocles' play solidified the narrative, making the riddle and its solver, Oedipus, legendary. Later, Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, famously used the Oedipus myth to develop his theory of the Oedipus complex, showing the enduring power of these ancient stories and shaping our understanding of the human psyche. The myth dates back earlier than Sophocles, found in fragments of epic poetry like the Oedipudeia, suggesting a long oral tradition. The riddle uses the metaphor of a day to represent a lifespan. Morning is the beginning, noon, the peak, and evening, the decline. The number of feet changes, tracking these stages. The challenge lies in understanding that feet doesn't refer to an animal's literal limbs, but rather modes of locomotion or support throughout a single entity's existence. It demands abstract thinking and a compassionate understanding of the human condition, from vulnerability to maturity and old age. The solution to the Sphinx's riddle is man. In the morning of life, a human is a baby, crawling on 4 feet, hands and knees. In the noon of life, an adult walks upright on 2 feet. In the evening of life, an old person might use a cane, thus walking on 3 feet, 2 legs, and the cane. Oedipus, using his wit and knowledge of humanity, solved the riddle, causing the Sphinx to destroy herself and freeing Thebes. His solution, though simple, revealed profound insight into the human life cycle, its fragility, and its progression. It's a testament to the power of self-knowledge and the ability of intelligence to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. What connections might exist between the Egyptian Sphinx, typically seen as a protector, and the Greek Sphinx, a deadly riddle poser? Did the Egyptians have their own riddles, or was the Sphinx's riddle a purely Greek innovation? How did the Oedipus Rex play influence later philosophical thought about fate, free will, and the nature of human suffering in ancient Greece? And what does the enduring appeal of this riddle reveal about humanity's continuous grappling with the stages of its own existence? Number 16, what came forth from the eater as meat and from the strong as sweetness? This powerful riddle comes directly from the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Judges, chapter 14. It is posed by Samson, a Nazarite strongman known for his superhuman strength and tragic flaws. Samson's riddle is born out of a personal experience and serves as a challenge at his wedding feast, with high stakes involved 30 garments and 30 changes of clothing. It's a riddle steeped in dramatic narrative, illustrating the interplay of strength, cunning, and divine will. Here is Samson's riddle. Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. The book of Judges recounts the stories of various charismatic leaders who delivered Israel from its enemies before the establishment of monarchy. Samson's story, set around the 12th, 11th centuries BCE, is one of the most vivid. He is a divinely appointed figure whose life is full of paradoxes, immense strength but moral weakness, a savior yet a rule breaker. The riddle context is crucial. Samson has killed a lion with his bare hands. Later, he finds a swarm of bees and honey in the lion's carcass. This secret knowledge forms the basis of his riddle. Biblical scholars like Richard Elliott Friedman, known for his work on the composition of the Bible, highlight how such narratives use specific events to convey theological messages in human drama. The riddle is a literary device to advance the plot and reveal character. The riddle is designed to be unsolvable without specific insider knowledge, which is a common trick in riddles from many cultures. The eater implies a creature that consumes something fierce, meat, suggests the result of that consumption, or the flesh of the eater itself. The strong is a direct reference to Samson's own strength, or the strength of the beast he encountered. Sweetness contrasts sharply with strength in the act of eating, hinting at something unexpected and delightful. The puzzle is a verbal trap, relying on a unique, personal experience of the riddle poser. The solution to Samson's riddle is a lion and a honeycomb. Samson's personal experience was finding a beehive producing sweetness honey within the carcass of a lion the eater, that he had slain, providing meat in its death, or a powerful, strong creature. The Philistines, unable to solve it, resort to bribing Samson's wife Delilah to coerce the answer from him. His reveal, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." Judges chapter 14, verse 18 confirms the answer and his betrayal. The riddle thus becomes a symbol of Samson's strength, his secret, and ultimately, his vulnerability to deception. It's a story of divine power, human weakness, and the consequences of broken trust. What specific cultural practices or beliefs about honey or lions in ancient Israel might have given deeper symbolic meaning to Samson's riddle for its original audience? How did the context of Samson's Nazirite vows, which included not touching dead bodies, add a layer of religious transgression to his discovery of the honeycomb in the lion? And what does the narrative use of an unsolvable riddle reveal about ancient biblical views on wisdom, cunning, and the ethical implications of intellectual contests? Number 17. What is the sound that has no tongue, yet its message is clear to all? This riddle, found in various forms across ancient European folklore, particularly in Celtic and early Germanic traditions, speaks to the significance of sound and communication in a world without widespread writing or electronic media. The object of this riddle was a common, yet powerful, means of transmitting information across distances and marking important events. It challenges us to identify something by its auditory characteristic, while paradoxically denying it the physical means of speech. Here is the riddle. What has no tongue, but speaks a clear message to all? In ancient Celtic societies, communication was primarily oral. Drums, horns, and bells played crucial roles in signaling, celebration, and warning. Communities were often geographically isolated, making audible signals vital for cohesion and defense. The ringing of a bell, for instance, could signify a call to assembly, a warning of danger, the start of a religious service, or a celebration. Historians like John T. Coke, a prominent scholar of Celtic studies, have documented the importance of oral tradition and sound in ancient Celtic social structures. The bell, often associated with early Christian missionaries in Celtic lands, also acquired strong spiritual significance. The riddle's genius lies in its immediate contradiction. How can something speak without a tongue? This forces the listener to consider what other mechanisms produce meaningful sound. The clear message implies universality and understanding transcending language barriers. It pushes us to think about sounds that carry specific, widely recognized meanings, even if they aren't words. It contrasts the biological mechanism of speech with an artificial one, prompting a metaphorical leap. The solution to this ancient riddle is a bell. A bell, with its metallic body, certainly has no biological tongue. Yet, when struck, it produces a sound that speaks loudly and clearly across distances. Its message can be a call to worship, an alarm, a celebration, or a toll of mourning, and these meanings are often understood by all who hear them, regardless of spoken language. The bell was a powerful symbol and a practical tool in ancient communities, its sound marking the rhythms of life and death, work and rest. This riddle captures the essence of the bell as a non-verbal communicator, highlighting its profound impact on communal life. How did the specific craftsmanship of bells in ancient Celtic or Germanic cultures, including their size and materials, influence the clarity or perceived power of their message? Were there specific ancient beliefs about the spiritual significance of bell sounds in warding off evil or summoning spirits? And what does the reliance on such auditory signals reveal about the sensory landscape and communication networks of ancient societies compared to our own visually dominated world? Number 18. What is a living thing that speaks without a mouth, has no head yet, advises, and is slaughtered to tell stories? This riddle, or variations of it, has deep roots in ancient Egyptian and Middle Eastern cultures, reflecting the profound importance of writing and text in early civilizations. It personifies the materials and processes involved in creating written records, transforming them into a living entity that paradoxically gives life to knowledge through its death. It's a riddle that celebrates the power of literacy and the tools that enable it. Here's the riddle. What is a living thing that speaks without a mouth, has no head yet advises, and is slaughtered to tell stories? Ancient Egypt, with its hieroglyphs and papyrus scrolls, was one of the earliest civilizations to develop a sophisticated writing system. The production of papyrus, made from the pith of the papyrus plant, was a complex and labor-intensive process involving slaughtering, cutting, and processing the plant. Scribes like Amenhotep c. 1100 BCE, whose wisdom texts are well known, held a respected position in society. Their ability to read and write was crucial for administration, religion, and the transmission of knowledge. The riddle itself might not be found on a specific papyrus in this exact phrasing, but it captures the spirit of how they would have viewed the raw materials for writing. Scholars such as Toby Wilkinson, an Egyptologist, often describe the revolutionary impact of writing on ancient Egyptian society. The riddle is rich with personification and paradox. To speak without a mouth points to the communication of ideas without vocal cords. 2. Advise without a head suggests wisdom imparted without a brain. And to be slaughtered to tell stories is the most striking image, implying a violent end that leads to a profound new beginning in the form of narrative and knowledge. It encourages us to think about the physical origins of our most abstract concepts, words, and stories, and the transformation of natural materials into cultural artifacts. The solution to this ancient riddle is a papyrus scroll, or a book-written text, broadly. The papyrus plant, a living thing, is slaughtered, cut down, and processed to create the scrolls. Once written upon, the scroll speaks without a mouth, conveying information, history, and wisdom. It advises by preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations, acting as a silent mentor even though it has no head in a biological sense. The stories and information inscribed on it are the direct result of this transformation. This riddle beautifully encapsulates the cycle from living plant to inanimate object to living knowledge, highlighting the profound act of writing and the creation of texts in ancient societies. It is a tribute to the power of the written word and the materials that enable it. How did the process of preparing papyrus, from plant to scroll, influence ancient Egyptian cultural perceptions of life, death, and transformation? Were there any specific rituals or blessings associated with the slaughter of the papyrus plant before it was made into writing material? And what does the personification of a written text as a living thing reveal about ancient Egyptian beliefs regarding the animation or spiritual essence of knowledge itself?